KINE 2P91 students and Professor Millington. Ian Gordon here, teaching and learning librarian with Brock Library, just to share some resources and some strategies to be successful not only in doing scholarly research and finding primary and secondary resources, but also managing your citations and meeting the criteria for this particular really interesting course. Here's an agenda of things I'm going to talk about, and all these slides are documented and archived so you can go back over them again. We're going to look at the guide, how to talk about a research question, search strategies, talk about databases, there's lots of them. Citing articles and books using Zotero and Zotero Bib. If you use them, great. If not, I'll introduce you to that. And at the end, I'll talk you where to get further help as well. On the Brock Library Kinesiology Research Guide, KINE 2P91 tab. So if you go to the Brock Library, many interesting things, including Omni, our hours, where to get further information. On the Research Guides button, click it and you'll get a listing of subjects or departments. And KINE 2P91 has its own research guide. You may have used it to find articles, doing evidence synthesis, but on the bottom, there's a KINE 2P91 tab that has this particular page on it. Doing your homework, defining your research question. This is really important, and I'm sure your professor, your TAs will go over this as well. Testing, trying, pushing, and pulling, and identifying the appropriate research question until you actually start to write is really important, because getting that right sets you up for success. Here's the proposal for the course. It talks a lot about it. It tells you what you're not supposed to do, what you're supposed to do. Again, you're looking at an issue related to the course, not a person or an event. The goals of this assignment are to familiarize with the research topic, conduct primary research on your topic, and develop an argument, again, using primary and secondary resources. Furthermore, this part, and as you move through iterations of this particular assignment, you need to find 5 sources, 2 of which are primary, 3 of which are secondary. My sense is that you'll find more than 5 and 2. You'll probably find 30 and 20 and use 5 or 2 or 3 or 4 or even 10 of those to complete your paper and the assignment as well. The term paper, which is a big part of this, is you need to set yourself up for success, so the research question is really important. But the challenge is hand to find an appropriate topic that, again, has a Canadian context to it as well. It's tough, and we can help with that as well. And lastly, as you're doing the term paper, it's a pretty short paper, 4 academic and 2 primary sources. Using APA, you need to pick a research topic that meets the criteria for the course, that's interesting to you and to others as well, and it meets the definitions of scholarly research. Let's go back to the guide now. It has a number of things if you move down further to it. The library digital learning modules, including library research fundamentals, is here for your use. These are learning objects the library's put forth, and your professor has highly recommended you move through these sorts of them. They have learning objects and learning activities, and they have a video attached to them. Go through them. You need to define how to tell the difference between primary and secondary resources. How to evaluate sources, because you probably have too many. You need to condense the ones you use. You need to identify what are scholarly sources and what smells, looks, and tastes like peer review. You have to meet the criteria for that. And what are databases? We have more than one database to use for this particular assignment. Further down on this list, I've included 2 links I use all the time. How to write a research question from George Mason University. It doesn't talk about your subject, but it puts into perspective of how important a research question is, how to write it effectively, and how to develop a strong research question. There's a video about that as well. This is what I've picked after much searching and trying, pushing and pulling. This was really interesting to me. 2016, as a Law and Order sort of guy, I was offended by Colin Kaepernick's actions on the field of being an activist and talking about racism within certain particular communities. But I grew to understand where he's coming. This video that came out and Nike sponsoring it was another issue that I think meets the criteria for the course. I'm going to use this as an example. Here's a quote: "Believe in something even if it means sacrificing everything." Here's a quote I got as well. Former San Francisco 49ers quarterback Colin Kaepernick famously took a knee during the U.S. national anthem and flying the flag before. And so he did this. Some people applauded it, some people didn't, thought it was unpatriotic. And it's moved to become an issue that's a recurrent theme in sociology of sports, but I found this to be really interesting. Here's another quote. The tradition of playing the national anthem prior to the kickoff was about to become a lightning rod. The pairing of sports and activism is nothing new in America. I thought this was great. I tripped across this while searching and pushing and pulling, testing and trying this particular subject to see if the research question would stand, and it did. Here's another quote. Famously told basketball player LeBron James was told that he should just shut up and dribble after he talked to a politics in an ESPN interview. So there's a positive and negative to this. There's no straight answer. A perfect topic, I think, for this particular course of racism, sociology, and activism. Here's another quote. The players who are choosing to protest during the anthem have repeatedly said their actions aren't directed towards the flag or military, but rather towards social issues. Should professional sports be a showcase for the discussion of social injustice? This is what your course is about. And lastly, in this particular thesis, I found history remembers Jackie Robinson, who is a huge topic. You may or may not choose. Tommy Smith and John Carlos. I was watching this on television in '68 when it happened in the Olympics as pioneers for speaking out against racial inequality. If progress is made in America in regard to the issues of police brutality and racial inequality, it's not too far-fetched to believe that decades from now, Kaepernick will be remembered in the same way for raising awareness to the issues and sacrificing millions of dollars for it. A really neat quote that really cemented my thought that this would be an interesting topic. But I still got to find primary and secondary resources to do it appropriately. So here's my research question. Is athletic activism appropriate in professional sports? The Colin Kaepernick legacy. So you can take this several ways, and so this is what I thought. When you look at this research question, these are the key concepts. So the major foundation issues discussed: sports and athletic activisms, racisms, professional sports. Again, in this assignment, you have to relate to Canadian context, and Nike. How can you not talk about this as well? These are the major concepts, and if you look at it, if you're relating to the criteria for this particular, I'm looking at activism, racism, as they deal with the sports, and these other related issues as well. So as I begin to tackle scholarly sources and secondary sources, I got to keep this in mind. If you look at it in a PI program, there's my research question or topic. And they've got three main pillars. I got to develop three types or forms of this essay, and I got to speak to these. And I'm trying to find scholarly peer-reviewed articles for each one of these concepts, and I want to find news-related information to add to it. We'll talk more about that later. But on the top right-hand corner, how current must the information be? I'm looking for things in language that is English. I'm looking for things that are disciplinary in sports. I'm not towards the sociology side. It's not politics. Format, the type of resources I'm going to use. Date. Everything happened since 2016 for the Colin Kaepernick legacy. But indeed, this issue has been in the literature, news, and academic for many years. I'm looking for primary and secondary sources, and I can't not look at my example, Nike, Kaepernick, and again, I can't forget about that Canadian context as well. When I try to find words that describe my concepts, I always go to word hippo, so I challenge you to do that. I put on the word racism, and it goes down, it helps me think and build a syllabus of what words are most appropriate for things and when I want to do searching, because when you enter a database, you have to include English text, and the results you get is only good as the term you use, but developing a lexicon is really important, and I'll show you how that works here as well. So here's my research question, my three concepts in blue, my other topics I chipped across, but sports or athlete. Now the asterisk, shift 8, at the end of athlete picks up any word with athlete. Athletes, athlete hyphen, athleted, if there's such a word, and putting quotation marks around two words, professional sport or sports or sporting, picks up those two words adjacent to each other. So you search some context when you're searching the literature as well. So I've got my three concepts, racism or civil rights, protesting, race or discriminating or discriminators or discrimination, prejudice or xenophobia. I never thought to use that. Nike, the Canadian context, and Colin Kaepernick. he has a number of Twitter handles as well that were used as well. Again, I'm just writing these down so I have them when I begin to search the databases. I can use many or all of these. So as I go back to my search strategy, you've got my key concepts, I've got my words on the right-hand side. These are the words I'm going to use to search, noting that there's many that can be used. Doing your homework, defining your research question. So you kind of got a research question. You've kind of developed your concepts and your keywords, but really you need some context. On this guide, further down, there's a number of tools. There's journals in sociology and sports. There aren't too many, but these are 3 that I've highlighted. There may be others in history of sports and related subjects, but go to these particular journals and browse. Or you can search within just these journals with the word activism, or racism, or Kaepernick, or gender, or whatever you want to do, to find articles that may be key articles you want to use. What it does is it helps assert whether this is a doable subject, your research question or topic is hitting home. It just helps you to be more familiar and comfortable with what other scholars are doing in academic milieus. Another way to do this is key open databases. These are open databases we connect to in the library, so they're free to use from anywhere at any time. Google Scholar is one of them. Base is another one that I use all the time. And you search just to see what's out there, to see if you can fill those buckets of your key concepts. Here's an example of a Google Scholar search. So I put in activism, sport, and the shift 8 asterisk, racism, Kaepernick, and you can sort it by data relevance. You don't know what it's scraping, but it gives you a sense when you search through the Brock proxy access, the titles, the keywords, the related terms. And on the right-hand side, you can link to the articles. And if there's nothing on the right-hand side, we probably have these articles. You just have to go to Omni and put in the DOI or the title to see whether they're in our library as well. So here's another search. I put in sport, protest, and in quotations, national anthem. I guess that was a key issue here. I found a number of the other articles. It looks like I'm building, I could grab any one of these. I could use Google Scholar, but I'm just testing and trying and pushing and pulling. Here's another search, Canadian or Canada or Canadien or Canadas is a word. There aren't a lot of journal articles that will speak to this. There's certainly a lot of news articles, so developing that context you need to pull your argument towards. It may be tougher for some people, but it's doable. So I just searched to see what was out there. Back to the guide again. Lots of stuff here. There's books and ebooks, handbooks, reference texts, textbooks to browse, including your own, to find key scholarly peer-reviewed articles besides your course text. And I've put the list of resources that you can search here with links to full text content and online and further down in print resources. These are key resources in sociology of sports. They're handbooks. They provide context, background information, scholarly articles, and it helps you define terms and how you could use the article and see if something's done similar to what you've done as well. So I searched the Handbook of Sports Studies. You can search all these or some of these. Further down, I found a number of these as well, just to kind of test and try. Serendipity is a research methodology. Just kind of go in and just browse to see what's there. The Oxford Handbook of Sport and Society, a 2023 title, is brand new and very important at first browse. I thought this was a really key source that you may want to use as well. So I jumped into it. It has a chapter and listing. You can actually search within the text of it. I found a chapter on sport movements, and athlete activism. Again, one of my key concepts. So I opened the chapter, I read it, I downloaded the PDF, and I grabbed the DOI, the Digital Object Identifier, put it in ZeroBib, so it did my bibliography for me. I can cut and paste that and put it into Word. I read through it. I found a really neat quote on the corporatization of activism. It says, perhaps the most famous suspect example here is Nike's commercializations for Kaepernick and his message of protest. But leagues and teams that have come late to social justice causes are targets of criticism as well. So I included that quote. I may or may not use it, but I grabbed it. And at the bottom is what my reference will be in my list of bibliographies. Again, a credible academic source for background information that provides key context and definitions as well. I went to the Handbook of Sports Studies. I mean, there's 10 or 20 of these. These are 2 that I just tried. Again, I can search within that textbook on the word activism. I can browse the table of contents, so just read to be better informed. So I went into the chapter on sports, racism, and ethnicity, and I looked at the chapter, I downloaded the PDF, and I found this particular quote by Jarvie about black sports persons in America have often become the celebrity status of heroine or hero. I think I may use this, but I'm going to set it to one side when I see it. When you see something, plagiarism is something you don't want to be accused of, grab the ZeroBib, create the citation, and cite it. Whether you use the idea or not, it's always best, if in doubt, cite. Don't be accused of plagiarizing somebody else's ideas or somebody else's quotes. It's pretty easy to do. So we've done some background information. We got a research question. We knew resources. The art of online searching. There's no one way to search, but I'm going to give you examples of how to search. So again, I've got my penciled out my key terms and concepts. When you're searching primary resources, think like an academic. It's always good to find 1 or 2 articles from different core open area disciplines just to see what's out there. Use the right databases and think like a database when you're searching. Search for articles in each database using your key concepts, keywords, and phrases. Search, again, looking for keywords in article titles, database subjects. Find highly cited articles. There's ways of doing that. Cite and download and reference citations at the end of your article. Cite and download forward. So if you find a really neat article, do a forward citation search to find who else has cited this article. But remember, serendipity is a research strategy. Don't be afraid to browse on an idea or a particular paper. Find a number of key articles for each concept. You want to fill those buckets, but ask for assistance if needed. If you kind of go, I can't do what you're doing, I just need help. For looking at secondary resources, you got to think like a news person, not like an academic, because they aren't peer-reviewed and they're not scholarly. Think like an editor, reporter, commentator. Think like a student or an interested reader. Find 1 or 2 articles in different core open or disciplinary databases. Use the right databases and think like the databases. Search for articles in each database using your keywords and concepts, so your language is still important, and do different searches using keywords and titles as well. But ask for assistance if you aren't finding what you're looking for, to fill that quote, to fill that citation, or to be better informed of the event, the person, and the issue that you're looking for. We can help. Wow. At this point, you may be going, wow, too much, Ian. Gosh, I've never used these databases. I've never searched the databases. We can help with that as well. Databases, there's lots of them. So in the guide, if you go further down, there's lots of databases that are there. Defining key primary scholarly resources, Sport Discus Web of Science Core Collection. There's a sociology and politics database. You can't search them all together, that would be neat, but you need to search Sport Discus. You need to search Web of Science. Now, it's just not science, it's social science and humanities. Core Collection means they're the core journals for all disciplinary scholarly research. You may just use these 2. I would suggest you do that. You may use other ones, but start with these 2. Again, you got your list of key concepts and keywords. You got to put something into these databases. So when I went to Web of Science, I put in the title activist or activisms or protest or similar concepts and ending your concepts. And I found 100,000 articles. I said, okay, and sport or athlete or athletes, or the phrase professional sports or sportings. And I found 10,000 articles. I went back and I said, let's add another concept, my really other concept, racism or civil rights or other those terms. And I found hundreds of articles, but I said, I only need a few. So I said, let's look at the first 2 concepts as titles and keywords. The last topic in this database is titles and keywords, abstracts, authors keywords, and database keywords as well. And I got this result. I got 47 results. Now, some people would say, is 47 too many, too few, or just right? Well, it's up to you. Use the filters on the left-hand side to limit by date, to limit by format, meaning articles, and limit by language, meaning English as well. And you can browse through the titles of the articles, looking at them one at a time, or saying, I will like these 5 or 6, or following them along the way. It's up to you to decide whether they fill the buckets for being a primary or scholarly resource for this particular paper. You need probably 2 or 3 for each concept that you're looking at. I found this article. Is it scholarly peer reviewed? Doesn't say it is. It looks like it because it has all the elements. This article has been cited 3 times by other papers. So if you clicked on this link in this database, you find who cited this paper since it was published. Only in 2022. It's a popular paper. I looked at the paper. I downloaded it. Yes, you have to read the articles. You need to cite it, and I use Bib to do that. And so I've got everything in hand. I can move on to maybe another paper and look at it as well. So as I said, when you're using scholarly resources, you can do a different type of search. So I looked at professional sports or NFL, and then I looked at Kaepernick. I wanted to use as an example, or his video, or Anthem as a National. So I put those together. I went from hundreds of thousands of articles to tens of thousands. And the last topic is just the default. And I clicked on search, and I found many articles to look at as well. Sport Discus is the other database I suggest you have to search. So I did the same sort of thing. I looked up one concept, I put in another concept, I put in a third concept, got hundreds of articles, so I said, look at these words and titles, just to be more specific, and I found 10. And some of these were actually in the Web of Science database, but I browsed through these, looking at these one at a time. Notice they come from key journals as well. When you find one, you look at it, it gives your author title, site, but this database actually has subjects. Activism is a subject. So I captured this paper, downloaded it, and cited it. But I clicked on activism, and I said, let's look at activism as a subject that pervades the whole database of hundreds of thousands of articles, and find out how many of them talk about Kaepernick, or Anthem or Anthems, or the video Dream Crazy. And I got 10 more, and I looked at them, and I pulled them up one at a time, and I said, this looks pretty interesting. So I grabbed the full text, I cited it, and pulled it together. Again, I had to read it, see whether it was relevant, and I filled another bucket on racism, on activism, and all my concepts. Lastly, let's go back to the guide as well, and falling for secondary or news-related resources. There's a list of news databases. There's about 25, but check for historical content in the coverage and the dates they cover as well. CBCA, Canadian Business Current Affairs, is a great start. There's open databases like Google Scholar I showed you, or BASE, I love that database. And there's other forward-citing searching databases as well. So here's some examples of things I've found searching by keywords and titles, and using a variant form, doing a number of searches to find articles that I need to supplement the scholarly articles for this assignment. Here's a Sports Illustrated article. If you were following Kaepernick, and nearly 1 million people were, you couldn't have missed it. He was screaming to be heard. And no one in the world of the NFL seemed to pay a lick of attention. No one said a damn thing until. So I thought this was really nice. It adds flavor, it adds color. It's not a scholarly resource, but it's a verified, vetted source. It comes not from the internet, not from YouTube, not from Twitter, or Facebook, or TikTok. It comes from a scholarly resource, a database. Sports Illustrated is a valid and a reputable news source as well. So helping to fill my buckets. Here's another thing. I got an article from the Toronto Star that talks about how he's a straight shooter. I cited it and I put it in my bibliography. Here's another article I used in another database. It cites the Financial Times. Who knows where that would have come, but it's a 3-page article. It talks on consumerism and socialism can be revealing. And I included this quote in my paper appropriately using APA style. Here's another one. I tripped across this one. Bill Russell, I watched Bill Russell play basketball, and he said, stand up for what is right. That may be part of my introduction when I talk about activism. If Bill Russell says it, and what he went through, and Kaepernick is still, this is an issue of serious discussion and scholarship and news for the sociology of sports. My last example, I had to go back in time. I found this tripping across an article called The Emergence of Activist Athletes in the New York Times. Again, the databases are specific. It says sports is no longer an intersection of American culture, but a peril-filled superhighway. I think I may include that in my concluding remarks for my essay. We're almost done. Citing articles and books using Zotero and ZoteroBib. So here we go. ZoteroBib, I've shown you, it works quite well. It's free, it's easy to do using DOIs, ISBNs. And you can actually put in article titles and it'll attempt to do what it wants. It doesn't really work well for news-related terms. But for every article, a scholarly article I used, I sent it to Zotero. I pulled a file in Zotero. It's mine, it's free to use, KINE 2P91, and I found maybe 30 citations. And you can click on these, take notes, tags, and then I can create a bibliography, as you can see on the right-hand side. If you don't know what Zotero is, you don't use it, it may change your life. Book a consultation, bring your laptop, and we'll show you how to use it together. Hopefully you're feeling more confident of developing a strategy to meet the criteria for this course, but do a really great and interesting paper as well. Where to get help? Lots of places. First of all, the guide I've been showing you. Email the library at any time. How does this work? I can't figure this out. Can you help me? Is this peer reviewed? They can help you with that. The Ask Us chat button is on every page for every library website. And it's a conglomerate of Ontario academic libraries across all universities, including Brock, that at night, through the day, through the night, even on weekends, can answer that quick question for you or give you help or assistance. Or if you want to book a consultation, I'd be glad to help you. When you click on it, it brings up a schedule. You can click on my name. It brings up when I'm available. When you click on the time that meets your requirements and mine, it'll ask you, so what do you want to meet for? And you say, hey, I'm doing a kinesiology assignment. I need help. I want to learn more about Cetero, or can you help me find a news article to fill this bucket of this concept I'm trying hard to do? Glad to help you. We've gone through a lot. Hopefully this will help you to be successful in this course, but I'll not only give you skills to do this paper, but other papers as you move through your academic career as well. Email me at any time. When you email me, put Brock or kinesiology in the subject line so it doesn't go to my spam or my junk email. I'll be glad to help you at any time. Best of luck with this particular assignment.